Good morning. I would like to thank organizing committee for nice meeting, but unfortunately, due to the problem of pandemic, there are some problem discrepancy as well as my situation that unfortunately I cannot be physically present, but my mind and my heart is with all of you. So please, if you have any question or any comment, you have my email, and please email me. So I will try to start by a short introduction, because most of you know the gallium oxide, and to speak about some result and new result and the discussion. So only I would like to say that one of the important achievement of the last century, it was the understanding of this different structure of atom, and especially semiconductor. And today we know that the semiconductor is not only silicon, carbon, colon 4, colon 3, 5, but any the oxide and most of the 2D material, and any thin layer can have the semiconducting behavior. And the most important of the semiconductor is the very clear for all of us that need of each individual in the society needs a kind of the three major fundamental component, that is the transistor, lasers, and detector, in order to have, again, to use for the different application, and especially in this conference, and at this time, how we can make to use it for detection and elimination of the coronavirus or any kind of virus that creating problem for the human. So what we do again, that is the colon 4, colon 3, 5, or the 2, 6, but by atomic and gap engineering of this element, we can come to make the device that can go from deep UV up to terahertz, and at the same time, the subject today is more in order to do that, we need the substrate, we need the epitaxy, the atomic deposition of the different element, and we need the photolithography at the same time in order to make the device. So, according to the quantum mechanics, if you use only the bulk material such as gallium oxide or silicon or gallium arsenide, the density of a state as function of the energy is the parabolic, and the device is not going to be very efficient. Now, if you use epitaxy and we do the quantum belt and to have the different material together at the same time, we can have one-dimensional confinement, so the energy as function of the density of a state, it becomes a stable behavior, and the device will be more efficient. And now, if you use at the same time the photolithography, we can have the 1D structure or two-dimensional confinement, and the three-dimensional confinement as a quantum dots or the artificial molecule, artificial atom, and by that we can come to have the device that is much more efficient and can revolutionize the technology. But so I will only explain very rapidly my background and what I did and why I'm doing as a. First, I started at the beginning to do that because I was always curious for that. So I tried to do the neutron activation analysis and the gamma spectroscopy for the different element in the periodic table, and to find in the cigarette and at center and to find the correlation between, again, the different element of the periodic table and with the human health or the cancer, etc. But unfortunately, I got the high dose of the radioactivity. I have to stop to go to the quantity to go to the physics, and I did again working with the phase change in perovskite of the lead phosphate. That is very similar to the gallium oxide, and that it was, and I was using different paramagnetic ions such as gadolinium, europium, manganese as a probe with the electron paramagnetic resonance to study the phase transition and calculation of the crystal field, understand it. But again, the problem was, what is the application? I didn't know. But I do all of that, but what we can do. So it was after my PhD that I went just side by side at Orsay in Paris to the Central Research Lab, and there Thomson that I become familiar with the 3-5 semiconductor laser detector transistor. And after that, of course, that in to 1991, it was at the Thompson, the Northwestern, that they were filling up the lake, on the lake, just a building, and they said that if I go, they are giving me the last floor of the building. So I had to start by scratch, and that it was my driving force and the vision that I had for to do the things that I can do today, and some of the results that you know. So I created the Center for Quantum Device, because everything that we are doing is the multidisciplinary. At the same time, when we are speaking about the gallium oxide, you have to have many different background and knowledge in order that to use it and to make it again the way that we would like to do the device that kill the coronavirus and to detect at the same time different virus. So for that, I put it is a multidisciplinary from the theory, material, the difference, the reactor, characterization, fabrication, device system, and to do all of the exactly from the theory up to the system to build everything. And for that, I created at the same time the research for all of the different materials, especially the semiconductor, from deep UV up to TERAS. Before gallium oxide, it was trinitride up to that. And now we have the gallium oxide in order to go to the deep UV, to that less than 200 nanometer. And for that, I created the undergraduate, graduate of the cell-tested engineering, because it was nothing in the literature. Everything was, and still at the same time, is mostly about the silicon, so that to bring the 3.5 semiconductor that I created that, and I created at the same time the different textbook, and the most important part, the fundamental of cell-tested engineering, that the fourth edition, as you can see here, just last year, it came out end of the, not just last year, more than 2 million chapter is downloaded. It means that it's very timely and timely. So now coming exactly the objective of the UV. Important of the UV. As we know, the ozone is opaque between 280 up to 320 nanometers. So for many different applications, they are important. But the most important part that is the subject of the today my talk, and at the same time for the gallium oxide, is the chemical and biological agent detection, and especially biofluorescence imaging that needs again the UV light. And why I would like to show you here, because with the trinitride, we can go the maximum aluminum nitride, we can go 200 nanometer, and at the same time to go up. But if we want to go to less than that, gallium oxide as a semiconductor, hide the white band gap, that is excellent solution. So in general, the UV that here we have UVC, UVA, and here is the deep UV. So UVC, that is the here that we can see, the UVC light deactivate the DNA of bacteria, virus, and other pathogen, and that destroys their ability to multiply and cause disease. So many biological agents fluoresce when excited by UV light. By combining UV emitters with the UV detector, it becomes possible to devise a compact system that can rapidly detect and identify certain biological agents based upon their fluorescence nature, the signature. So that is the objective. And for that, when I started at Northwestern, I built the reactor again, that the emissivity reactor with the extra, that still I'm using exactly the same for the trinitride and at the same time for the gallium nitride. And we started to do the exactly the UV LED and detector based on aluminum nitride and gallium aluminum nitride. And that again, I'm not going to the detail of that. That only one thing that I would talk to, but I show that the hardened material is important. The material that here, that's the structure of the UV LED, that is the same at the same time for the detector, and that and that is done done again at the Northwestern by the material science by Professor Dravid, and that as we can see here, that we have the SPIE, the substrate that has, again, I have to increase something again, because for the aluminum nitride, gallium nitride, that is so important, we cannot have any substrate. But for the we can have for the the gallium oxide that I'm coming in, that is one of the interesting things that we can have the substrate on that. So at this here we can have the sapphire substrate and has 9 the plane of the sapphire or the aluminum nitride is equivalent to the 8, and we can see that at every 9 plane we created 1 edge dislocation. So if what that means, it means that if you have here any device, laser, detector, anything, they can have excellent performance independent of the large lattice mismatch and independent of all of the defect at the interface. So that it was the things that we demonstrated. We demonstrated for the detector, all of that, it was the word demonstration, and still they are the best at the same time. So we demonstrated by aluminum, if we do the atomic engineering and to put a few molecule of the aluminum and the gallium in the aluminum nitride, we can come from the aluminum nitride to gallium nitride and to have any difference detector that we want. So that is the result, okay? And now, again, if you are coming, we need the detector at the same time and the laser at the same time, or LED. And as I explained, the structure of the LED and laser detector is very similar, only we have the PIN, you have the forward bias is the LED emitter, reverse bias is a detection and detector. So that it was the things that by optimizing aluminum nitride, gallium aluminum nitride for the first time in the world, we try to come up with all of the LED that you can see indeed all of this wavelength, and at the same time the most important, and the detector exactly as I showed you. And what was the important, because if a few molecule of anthrax you shine with 280 nanometer, you have the fluorescence and you can detect immediately with the detector that we have a few molecules of anthrax, exactly as you can see here, or for the NADH for the 340, or tyrosine, one after each other, it came and is demonstrated. So all of that is done in my group, and we demonstrated to the world that is possible. We publish and the results. So now today our objective is for the gallium oxide to come again to have the LED and in a deeper in order for the coronavirus. That it was my objective, and I explained in my the talk last year, and rapidly after that in 2020 I reported, and that 28th January 2021 Nisha demonstrated with the 280 nanometer deep UV they can eliminate 99.99% of the SARS-CoV-2, and in 16 July 2021 they showed that the UV LED can provide 99% surface disinfection of COVID-19 Delta variant in 1 second, and now there are a lot of activities going around for the using that against the coronavirus. So, as we know, the gallium oxide is a polymorph. And what is the problem of the oxide? And they're similar to the lead phosphate that I did. The symmetry is low. When the symmetry is low, it's beautiful for the difference application, but unfortunately it's very hard to make the device, especially the laser LED on this material. And at the same time, one of the big problem again, as it is again, is the doping. So we have the gallium oxide has the different polymorph that most of you are familiar, and you have to know that. So the one of the interesting part is the theoretical background, similar to the aluminum nitride, gallium aluminum nitride, that we have here band gap as function of average the band length, or the lattice parameter, if we can say, we can see that here with the aluminum nitride, gallium nitride, with the interband, intersubband, with the atomic engineering, we can come from the deep UV 200 nanometer coming up good with the intersubband even up to terrace. But now when we have with the gallium oxide, if we come with the aluminum oxide and to do with the aluminum oxide, gallium oxide, and indium oxide with the atomic and gap engineering, we can come with the, again, energy gap much higher, as we can see here. It means that we can go really above the UVC, the things that we need. So that is, and on the other hand, again, that is the interesting part. So I would like to see that here the structure of the beta phase is direct gap is a semiconductor direct gap with the band gap about 4.85 electron volt with a large dielectric constant and with the high breakdown voltage, and at the same time with the mobility that is acceptable for the n-type, of course I'm speaking, but the problem is the thermal conductivity. So as we know, God didn't give the perfection to anybody, only keep for himself. So that, but the human, gives the intelligence to the human in order that how to use that and to put them together in order to make it again for the human help, so to help the human. So one of the important again of the beta gallium oxide is the Baligo parameter. The definition of the Baligo parameter that most of you know is to minimize the conduction loss in low frequency unipolar transistors. So when we can see that, well, comparison to the gallium nitride, silicon carbide, or silicon is much higher. What does mean? It means that if we make the transistor, it can be much better performance, especially for the breakdown voltage. On the other hand, the copper phase again is the direct gap and is stable and has at the same time the band gap in the UVC region and has the ferroelectric behavior and has large spontaneous polarization, about 3 times larger than aluminum nitride. So we can see that all of that is very important for many applications. So there are many applications is coming out since long time, and at the same time that we can see that recently there are many that combining even with the graphite or gallium nitride, and at the same time that the result is come permanently. So, and at the same time, that is the here show that again in the gallium oxide, if for the high power and high voltage capacity, if we compare the gallium oxide by the comparison to all of the other material that are using, the breakdown voltage of gallium oxide is much higher, and we can have substrate. That is my substrate that we cannot have with that. So now, and at the same time, the substrate is we can buy that is of course that is not price is not cheap by comparison to the sapphire, but is exist. And the mobility here, high mobility as function of carrier concentration with the difference that unfortunately there is no p-type. And that's a problem. And at the same time, for the n-type, that is our new result because we have not some new result that with a very high mobility at room temperature and at the same time low temperature that I'm coming back later on. So now the objective, the problem is p-type. So when they ask me, in order to start to do gallium oxide emissivity, immediately in the same reactor that I was doing the ammonium, the aluminum nitride, I tried to use this reactor immediately for the gallium oxide. What we did, very simple, for the group 3, okay, we had the organometallic. For the group 6, I used the ionized water, N2O or oxygen. The N2O oxygen is we have to be very careful, especially with emissivity. So this result I'm not giving just now because it's under the study now, but I'm giving you immediately the result of the ionized water because we said that. And we use at the same time the gross temperature in our this reactor. We can go between up to 1000 degrees, and for the emissivity you cannot go to very low temperature because you need to have the temperature to decompose the organometallic, and the pressure between 50 to 150 millibar, and using the carrier gas, hydrogen, nitrogen, and etc. For the substrate, we try to use different sapphire substrate, and at the same time beta gallium oxide, and for the doping we use the silicon, tin, magnesium that we had in the reactor, and at the same time for the band gap engineering, very similar to do the difference gallium, indium gallium oxide, aluminum gallium oxide, etc. So I'm giving you here just some of the results that is the old result, but it's not old because we need to repeat all the time in order to understand exactly the mechanism. So that when we are growing under the hydrogen, and at the same time we grow this material with as function of the 6:3 ratio, as function of gross temperature, gross pressure, that is the result at 690 degrees. As we can see, that is the beautiful X-ray, very nice at the same time surface, and we did the photoluminescence similar to the gallium nitride. Instead of yellow peak, we have the blue peak, and this blue peak and all of the photoluminescence show that first of all the photoluminescence peak is around the 264 nanometer, that the gap of the 4.8, and at the same time all of the peak that we can see is related to the defect. So we did some the time resolved differential transmission by Professor Khodaparas, and showed that again except 690 the material, the carrier lifetime is longer than the others, so that it wasn't. But we did the transmission to have some ideas about the gap, and as you can see here, the optical transmission show that the gap is about approximately 4.8 electron volt. Now, in order to understand again the better, we try to make the transmission electron microscope, and the transmission electron microscope show that on the alpha gallium or aluminum oxide, we have alpha gallium oxide first, and after that transfer to copper gallium oxide, and the quality and the material is copper phase. So, and that this result again is published by the group of that was by the group of Professor Drobi, and that we make again the device, because that's the best way to understand. Very simple essay, MSM rapidly, and we show that yes, that is the cutoff is 261 nanometer with the 41.7% the external quantum efficiency in this material. So that is proof that yes, from the one part is the direct, and at the same time is the copper phase. Now we did we increased when we measured the material, we saw that the material, we have excellent the structural characterization, characteristics, and everything. But unfortunately, the material is very resistive. No way to make any measurement. We doped with the silicon, we doped with the tin, and with the silicon, unfortunately, that again, it was resistive. So what we did, similar to the aluminum nitride, and the aluminum gallium nitride, we tried to do the annealing. We did the annealing at 1000 degrees with the material of the copper phase, with the doped with the silicon in situ and ex situ. It was very interesting because immediately here you can see the X-ray, as grown, it was copper phase. After the annealing, it becomes beta phase. That X-ray, transmission electron microscope, all of that show that yes, X-ray is the beta phase. And the transmission show that there is no change in the energy gap. As grown, and after annealing, copper and the beta give exactly the same the energy gap. But something that it was very interesting, we tried to see that when we doped with the silicon, as function of increasing of the silicon doping, we change again the mobility and carrier concentration. But some beauty, interesting things that we found when we dope with silicon, the material again, is changed the phase. It means that if we know to keep fit the value of silicon at as an example, 20 cc, if we change the 6:3 ratio, the material is going from N-top to the P-top. So first we try to make with the N-top beta gallium oxide to make the transistor. We make the transistor, and that is the result. I'm not going to do it because we published very nice result. Came out with the very thin layers and the breakdown voltage more than 400 volts. It means that is excellent. Again, the result for the very thin layer for the transistor. But so summary here, we found that first of all, we can go under the hydrogen and doping with silicon. We can have copper phase, and the increasing the temperature at 1000, it becomes beta phase, and we demonstrated the energy gap with the detector is about again 4.7, and we try to make at the same time the N-type the gallium oxide transistor. Now the objective, again, as I mentioned, it was the P-type, and so we changed carrier concentration. We changed the carrier concentration and we put nitrogen, and at the same time we changed the temperature from 700 up to 1000 degrees. That is the result. We showed that if we doped if we have used nitrogen as a carrier gas, when we change the 6:3 ratio as function of 6:3 ratio with the same other material, everything is fixed, no change. Only to change the 6:3 ratio as function of temperature, we saw that first we have n top, and after that at the higher, when we decrease this with the 6:3 ratio to 100, it becomes the p top. So that it was again showing that, and now if you have not, we try not to make the transistor again. So by doing again doping with the silicon and at the same time decreasing the 6:3 ratio, we have the p-top transistor with the characteristic that you can see here. Now we try to do without silicon, without the doping with silicon, we couldn't have anything. So that it was, we demonstrated again that we can have the p-type as function of 6:3 ratio, and by using the silicon, and that silicon play a amphoteric behavior in this material and go from the again to substitute oxygen but with the double acceptor. It means that one substitution and connection with one defect. So that it was again, in order to understand better, we try to dope with indium, because indium is a group 3. So if I increase the indium gallium oxide, in this case I have to have higher group 3 by comparison to the group 6, and that. But again, it was very interesting that we found that if we are going, first of all, when we are growing, when we are doping with the indium, or I'm saying doping because by changing the value of indium, we didn't see incorporation of the indium at the present time in the condition with the gallium oxide. But something that it was very interesting, it was when we doped with silicon, the material electrical characteristic, it becomes, again, now we can measure material, it becomes conductive. So we did a lot of all of the characterization, everything that's the n top, and become again the n top with that we can measure the carrier concentration. So now again, as you can see here, for the n top gallium oxide, we increase the value of the indium. As you can see here, we have carrier concentration as function of the, again, resistivity. We see that the material is always n top, no change, and the high mobility at the same time that we can see. So by increasing the indium, as we can see, there is no change. That we increase the carrier concentration and we decrease the mobility, but material is always n top. So we try to make the transistor, and we make the transistor exactly as a material that show that the material is n top. It means that despite that we have indium gallium oxide, the material is n top. Now what we did, we tried now to again to change, to keep the without silicon. If we don't dope the silicon, the material gallium oxide layers, they are n top with an intrinsic carrier concentration, if they are n top, and we can measure the n top. Now, if we use the silicon, however, when we doped with silicon, that in this case, the material, it becomes exactly as we can see here, the material, it becomes a start to become p-type. As the zero silicon with the indium gallium oxide, they are n top, we can do the measurement, but when we increase the silicon, the material can go from the n top to the p-type. And is independent, again, the value of the indium. So that it was, now we make the transistor, yes, when we put silicon inside, in this case, the material become p-top, and they show that transistor, they show that the p-top behavior. So we find that here, that we can have the high quality gallium oxide film by emissivity on sapphire substrate, and the material is copper phase. When we anneal, it becomes beta phase. And if we dope with the silicon, in this case by changing the 6:3 ratio, we can have pure n-top, and we demonstrated by that, and we demonstrated experimentally that the silicon play on photonic behavior. So that it was the situation that we did to demonstrate that we have also accomplished p-top conductivity in indium gallium oxide alloys, and demonstrated that the silicon play a significant role in achieving the p-top behavior. So despite the bright future of fabricating the p-top gallium oxide based material through emissivity, the epi layers that have been grown so far appear to have a significant number of the defect inside. And the theory demonstrated at the same time. So I wanted, in order to understand, because for me, all of the measurement, everything is one part, but doing it PIN in the same material is the most important part to show the p-top behavior. So in order to explore this, the undiscovered area of gallium oxide, systematic approach to understanding material itself and the physics behind is required. So for that, I try to do the following: comprehensive analysis of the p-top gallium oxide, and to see the effect of gallium oxide, and for that, similar to the aluminum nitride, gallium nitride, the way that I did to understand the defect and eliminate the defect, eliminate the yellow peak for that, and to have the excellent result that I demonstrated. And at the same time, p-top, because p-top in the aluminum nitride, aluminum gallium nitride is developed by my group, and that is my patent that I did. So similar, I try not to do for here. First, to see the effect of the substrate, because when we have the substrate on the sapphire, we have a lot of dislocation at the interface. So the best way is to grow on the gallium oxide substrate. So we thought that's the gallium oxide substrate that exists, and that is it that I showed that before, and that we bought that exactly as you can see here, the difference orientation, and at the same time, that I'm not going to the detail here, that so the things that we did, we try to have now the substrate to see the characterization, again, electrical, optical structure. And we can see that the bare substrate that I bought from the Japanese, again, that's the X-ray, and at the same time doing the under the nitrogen and under the hydrogen. And we found that the hydrogen at the create the defect and the problem for the gallium oxide at the high temperature. So now we did the photoluminescence, and it was very interesting, because exactly as we can see, similar, the defect that I had in the epi layer has but one interesting thing, that under hydrogen annealing, when we do the hydrogen annealing, one peak appear here at 250 nanometer. So it's important to understand what is the really origin of that. There are some, the hypothesis, there are some work in the literature. I'm not going to the detail, but that is the funding. Okay, so the orientation of this substrate is not the same as the orientation of the previous one that I showed that. So here they showed that, again, that is the beta, that is the bare substrate, X-ray, and that is the under the nitrogen, the same problem of the hydrogen. And the X-ray show exactly similar behavior as you can see here. So I found that here, the problem is at the summary was the characterized and summarized data of the all given gallium oxide substrate from the US and Japanese company show that the effect of desorption process on difference orientation substrate we demonstrated, and we find that the result indicate that the usual desorption process at 1000 degrees C, at 1000 degrees C, exactly under the hydrogen damaging, the limited amount of gallium oxide substrate have impeded the progress on homoepitaxial growth, and we are eager not to make further improvement in high quality homoepitaxial gallium oxide. So in conclusion, I found that I cannot have the good gallium oxide substrate. Is very, very expensive and is important because when you have this kind of study, you have to have enough substrate, different orientation, different etching, the different surface, similar to indium phosphide gallium arsenide. So it was impossible. So I continue on the sapphire substrate at the present time. Now, the other one is the effect of the annealing process. So we did the annealing again, and we found that yes, the material is the copper phase, and then the anneal at 1000 degrees, more than 900, it becomes beta phase. And that, again, that we published, and the conclusion was that yes, we demonstrated the phase transition from the copper to beta. So that, and at the same time, we demonstrated when we doped with silicon and we go after annealing, that become beta phase, it becomes conductive and has the carrier concentration that we go that a few 10 to the 18 and the mobility at room temperature 22 to 50 degrees. So we went again to have the effect of the carrier gas. We said that if we grow the material, again, the material under the nitrogen carrier gas instead of hydrogen, the material becomes a stable copper phase. It means that even if we do at 1000 degrees for anything is impossible, it remains copper phase. So I also showed you already how the copper phase is important, that for the different application and different things that I'm not going to the detail here, but we demonstrated that we can have the stable copper phase. So that it was the conclusion here, and now we get the indium, the effect of the indium and silicon co-doping, because with the quaternary aluminum gallium nitride, we found similar things, that when we increase the indium is not incorporating in the aluminum gallium nitride, but the material quality becomes much better. Similar effect we have here. It means that silicon play as a surfactant. It means that as a large atom is create a kind of decreasing the mobility of the dislocation. So that is the conclusion that we saw, that if we increase the indium co-doping with silicon, we can have a much higher, much better electrical performance and electron mobility. So we at the present time, we demonstrated trimetal indium flew during the various superlattice growth. We did the difference structure in, we didn't see any incorporation, and that we found that at the present time, it play only as a surfactant, enhancing the electron hole mobility, improving the material quality. So I would talk at the present, at this time, to say that, okay, we found that with all of this result, that yes, at the p-type, at the high temperature transistor that we did exactly, that is correspond with all of the funding that we found. It means that if we grow under the nitrogen carrier gas at very high temperature, and we doped with the silicon, the silane with the 6:3 ratio, we can have p-type, but unfortunately, again, as we can see, is the defect related. So that is the study at the present time to give that how to eliminate the defect, the other defect in the epi layer, in order to understand much better. So the work is continuing. Now, I would like to give you some of the nitride oxide heterogeneous heterostructure that we did. We tried to have the gallium oxide on aluminum nitride on sapphire. That's the X-ray, that's electron, again, the scanning electron microscope. That again, we demonstrated that we can have very high mobility at room temperature and at the same time at liquid nitrogen. So for that, by here, I would like to stop and to say that that is the very exciting, very rich, and very sophisticated the material that needs a lot of study, and thanks to, again, the efforts Dr. Ali said, that giving that a lot of great group that they are working on the subject, and that is the really very exciting and rich from the science and at the same time technology and the future. So that's the future. By that, I would like to again to stop, and thanks for your attention. And please taking care of yourself, to be very careful. Please again, www, to wash your hand and put the mask and try to be separate from each other, and have a safe trip again, an excellent conference, and all the best. And if you have any question, please don't hesitate to send me the email. And please, I'm asking now Dr. Dave Rogers to continue, and I wish to have for all of you all the best. Happy again conference, excellent conference, and take care and all the best. Thanks. Bye-bye.